Hello and welcome again to Hockey on 216, proudly driven by Hyundai. Today in studio with me, Bridget Key, as always. Bridget, great to have you back. I know it's a busy day for you. You're busy out there, lots of games going on. For those of you at home, we're busy shooting the show Wednesday morning, the 30th. So lots of hockey coming from all over the country already, and that I know in your day job it's keeping you busy.
Yep.
Manny Segale, great to have you again on the show. Not your first appearance, but standing in for Crinison Woodley, who is down at the Standard Bank Hibbit Shield at Grey High School at the moment. Manny, great to have you here. For our viewers at home who perhaps don't come from the Joburg area and know you that well, they might have heard your voice on quite a bit of SuperSport Schools commentary this year. A former umpire, managed a lot of teams. An ex-Parktown boy, been a tough week for you.
Yeah, it was a tough week, but we'll always bounce back. We always do.
Exactly.
So
resilient team.
Resilience there. So great to have you on the show. One of the things that we've been talking about on the show over the last couple of weeks is just the amazing Astroturfs that we have around the country and just the facilities that our kids get to play on that, which is absolutely fantastic. But you know, one of the things that's really wonderful and we're loving is some of the photos especially from the Friday Night Lights and stuff. And this past weekend, we received a wonderful photo from Charlie Hoffmeyer in Ceres. Just, you know, as you can see, just such a glorious sight as in Astroturf, any in the world against a mountain range like that. For those of you who aren't aware, that was the Gericka Hockey Fierce that took place for under-13s, boys and girls, over Friday night and Saturday. From Ceres, that's Oakcorp Mountain. Bridget, for trail runners, there's some wonderful trails up in those mountains. It's an incredible place. So just an extraordinary Astroturf, and we'd really love our viewers to send us in. If there's a more beautiful Astroturf in the country, they're going to be hard-pressed. I've seen the one at Amanus with its sea view is quite special. Have you guys got a favourite, Astroturf from a setting perspective?
You just stole my one. I was going to say Hermanus.
Okay.
It's phenomenal. I love that one. Where you look and you're almost playing and you look down onto the coast, and then the mountain behind you.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Any favourites other than the Parktown Astro?
Yeah, for me, it's not going to be the Parktown Astro, but the Bishop's Astro, with the mountain in the background.
Bishop's Astro is very special, and that setup above and everything is really special.
Yeah.
I'm hearing whispers of a second Astro, if they can raise the money, which shouldn't be too tough at Bishop's. They're talking about a second Astro, but that I agree with you. It's certainly wonderful. And SACS obviously not far behind. They sort of share a view, but they're wonderful. Anyway, we'd love from our viewers, so if they stick it out, put it on social media, hashtag Hockey on 216. We'd love to see if there are any better, more beautiful sites out in hockey, and we just love seeing so many kids out there having fun. On the subject of Friday Night Lights, we've just come off another wonderful weekend of Hyundai Friday Night Lights hockey. It started on Thursday, as it tends to do in this hockey world. Nobody doesn't quite always take place on the days that we set out for it, which was really fantastic. But Thursday night, all the action was in Bloemfontein. What did we see there, Bridget?
So everyone went across to Bloemfontein for some reason. We had Paarl girls across and Paarl travelling there. So Unisi played Paarl on Thursday night. Paarl sneaking in a win against Unisi, which was a nice result for them and a great way to start.
It's a really good result because they'd come off a loss against Affy's Macy's the week before. So we were a bit, in the show, and we got it wrong. We didn't think they were going to have the weekend they had.
Yeah, absolutely. So they started their campaign and they travel really well. It's hard to travel all that way to Bloem and play in cold conditions on a Thursday night. And then you had Paarl girls playing Oranje getting a win in there, which is predictable predictable. And that was just a nice one. It was just a really good one. And then Friday.
I think really Friday is where it all kicked off, isn't it? Friday night was just magic.
Yeah. Friday.
Unisi obviously getting the win against Paarl girls, which was expected. But the really big encounter, which we were looking forward to, was this Paarl touring, playing Oranje at Oranje.
No, it was.
What a game.
I threw out a win for Oranje. I was wrong.
So did I. I was more wrong than you.
And Paarl,
badly wrong.
Paarl just came out guns blazing. They have the player of the year so far for me. Radomir is just taking the win left, right, and centre. She got 2 goals, so she got her team into a 3-2 win. And this end goal, it's such a way. You got dying seconds left, and there it is for Paarl to sneak the win with the 3-2-1. Yeah.
And I think the captain, Johnny Devina, got the other goal.
Yes, she did.
Also having a very, very solid season. Some really impressive players in this Paarl team and girls team, and I think we're going to deep dive and talk a bit more about them in the show. We perhaps haven't shown them the respect and love. We didn't see this coming. You've been talking about some of their players from the beginning that have really been doing well. While we're on the subject of Bloemfontein, though, you know, the Paarl schools were touring,
Yeah.
so it wasn't just the girls' schools. Paarl, you know, Paarl were obviously up there playing other sports. I mean, incredibly, those who watched the rugby show probably didn't see the rugby result coming either. Paarl beating Grey College for the first time since 2017.
Incredible.
The Paarl netball girls winning as well. But many really interesting one for us because we've really thought this Grey College hockey team have played solid hockey this year. You would have seen quite a bit of them at Nomads and various things. But losing to Paarl in Bloemfontein, a surprise result.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought Bloemfontein throwing us such a good fixture? And it really was a fantastic fixture. 6 goals coming from that game. But that Paarl side is really good. I know they may have gone into this game as the underdogs, but for that 60 minutes, they really were the dominant side and they really deserved to win it. Some amazing players there. Hibbit, the number 9. He managed to score a goal, and he's so electrifying in the front. Leads his side well. And Juan Swanepoel, he managed to get to the skipper, and he managed to get the goal that won them the game. And just a brilliant side, and someone that we really have to look out for, this Paarl side.
Absolutely. I mean, look, they've been an incredible outfit, and not to throw away. You know, I mean, it was a relatively close encounter. Although, I mean, I suppose the 2 goals in the end, you know, the 2-goal lead probably. You know, really shows just what a good win it was for him. I mean, for me, guys, one of the most, you know, just incredible things is obviously Paarl is a you know, the boys and their girls.
Yeah.
It's not like it's an all-boys school. It just has, so their resources are limited. They've put out an extraordinary rugby team, which I think is sitting sort of at the top of the rankings. A hockey team that's really got to be watched, and they're gonna take a few scalps this season.
Yeah, and on the boys and the girls side, which is incredible.
Yeah, indeed. And it's been a while coming now. They've been cooking something up at the moment. Jacques Krobler, the coach, who's in charge of them this year, they've been a good side. They haven't managed to get all the results they would have wanted to. They drew 2-2 against Parktown. As we mentioned, they had a tough weekend. But I think they're going to be really good going forward once they get the side to really gel, play together. And I don't know what's happening in the Boland region, but they're doing something with regards to their hockey.
Paarl, they eat well.
Absolutely, and we've certainly seen that, as you say, in the Boland region. A lot of those Boland results right across some of the tournaments this season. We've seen some very good results for the Boland teams. Typically, we've often been talking about the Paarl Roos team, but now Paarl coming to that party from a boys' perspective. Grey College will be a bit disappointed. They've had a very good start to the season. They played some really good hockey at times. They'll be very disappointed with the loss to Gim at home at this time of the year, I would have thought. Yeah, they were good. And, you know, leading up to this fixture, they had some good results at Nomads. They had some really good results against the likes of Hilton and a good result against Jeppe, managing to draw that one. But like I said, I think the derby, Paarl, they were up to the task. You know, they had travelled a long way to play this game. It's not a bad Grey College side. It really is a good Grey College side. And they were just, on the day, they were just outplayed, but not a side to count out going forward.
Yeah, I think someone to watch.
Absolutely not. Yeah, as you say, really, Paarl are going to be really interesting to watch. And there's certainly something coming on there. I mean, you've spoken about Jacques Schrobler, Danelle van Zyl and her girls team are producing some wonderful results. They've got a big weekend this weekend. Paarl are hosting the first Girls Challenge. So Girls Hockey Challenge starts off today.
Yep.
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
The first. Sorry, for those of you, we're talking today is the 30th of April for us, but the 1st of May in Paarl. You know, I've been down. I think I've said on the show before. Paarl is one of my great places to tour. The food hospitality for the parents is going to be absolutely amazing. They do a wonderful job of that under 16 girls and boys tournament that they host every year in August. This is a new tournament and one that we're really excited about. So some wonderful teams playing. We'll be talking a bit more about that later in the show. Bridget, the boys team are going to be playing at the Hibbit Shield. They're in a tough pool. Again, we'll be talking about that. So I think we'll really see this Grey College result where it sits once they come through this Hibbit Shield this weekend.
Yep.
Talking about boys hockey, the last of our games on Friday night, we finally saw SACS come to play. You know, they've been, for those who don't know, they have been touring the Netherlands. They've had a wonderful tour of the Netherlands in which they were unbeaten. Wonderful captain in Joe Leroux, who seems to be leading the charge there and doing really well. I know Lita Cry didn't play on Friday night, but a really good win for them against Paarl.
Yeah, good win. A team I've been excited to watch. They went over to the Netherlands and came out of there undefeated, which is just a magnificent feat, you know. Lita Cry, not playing. He was on Junior Africa. Well, he had just come back from Junior Africa duty.
Where they won. Where they won,
as well as Matthew Lawson.
Yeah.
So they had a couple of players, 2 injuries to Daniel Grays as well as Regan Villa. So they had a lot of players out, basically half their spine out. But still, they managed to have such a good performance. They went 1-0 down, and at that stage in the second quarter, they might have thought they were in trouble, but the class of the side just managed to come out, and they got that win against a really good Paarl side.
Yeah.
Well, the Paarl side, we've been talking about it a lot this season, about their whole program. I'm sure we'll talk a bit about some of their girls. They had some good results last week as well, later in the show, but it really was a good result there for the SACS team, and we'll obviously be watching them very, very closely. They've had some coaching changes this year. So Joe Leroux's dad has stepped down. I think obviously he decided, Etienne, that doesn't want to be the coach when his son is in a captaincy year, which is an interesting change for them. But they really were the team of last year. You know, pretty much dominated the year from a boys hockey perspective. They've played one, and obviously we're looking forward to see what they bring to the party as they come into the Standard Bank Hibbit Shield this coming weekend. Any other sort of pieces that you looked out for in that SACS side? Is there anything that you saw in the way that they played that you think may have come from playing, I think, 5 or 6 games in the Netherlands?
Yeah, well, you can see in that side that they know exactly what they want to achieve. You can see a clear game plan, and through Joe Leroux, they get the ball out to the back, and he really is the decision maker. As much as we talk about a Lita Cry or a Mohlodi Maseko or a Reece Tienerson, he makes all the decisions in that side. He decides whether they need to go forward or...
He's got incredible spatial identification, I found. Like, he just finds and pinpoints those spaces so well for his side.
I'm sure there's been a few dining room discussions.
No doubt.
Absolutely. And you certainly see that coming through in his play, don't you? And he's pretty handy from the top of the D with his drag flicking as well.
Yeah, exactly. A good flicker as well. So it's so good to have players of that quality. You know, they've got 3 good flickers in Tienerson and Tiener's Cry, as well as Joe Leroux. But for me, I know we talk about Lita Cry and Matthew Lawson quite a lot. For me, he is the spine of that side. He is what makes them tick. And without him getting that go-forward ball, you know, they just lose that player who can get them from the back up to the top really quickly.
You know what I also noticed is that you can see they've learned some interesting international hockey overseas coming from tour in Holland. Like, just their clinical output in the penalty corners was so good in that game. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. They executed it well, you know, so it shows that they've actually taken a lot out of their tour, which is what you want.
I guess the wonderful thing is we've had a number of South African teams that have toured recently, so it's really going to be interesting to see what those teams, as they come back from their various tours. I know the St Andrews girls here in Joburg have just come back from
DSG.
their tour, and I spoke to Lisa, their coach, yesterday, and she said it was just she took 2 teams over from under 16s open, and she's seen just an amazing growth. And it'll be interesting to see how, for example, on that St Andrews girls team, how they progress through the year, and some of the other teams that we've also seen touring this year. So a wonderful Hyundai Friday Night Lights.
Yes.
It really is building up to be the spectacle that we at SuperSport Schools hoped it would be this year. So, we're going to have a lot more Friday Night Lights action this weekend, and we'll be talking about that later in the show. We'll be back with a whole lot of wonderful derby results straight after the break. Welcome back to Hockey on 216, proudly driven by Hyundai. It's been another wonderful week of derby hockey around the country. We certainly can't go through all the results that we saw, so we've sort of picked a number out from around the country. Probably a lot more boys hockey than girls hockey this last weekend, Bridget, but a lot to do with a lot of the girls teams traveling down to Wynberg for the All Girls Festival, and we'll be talking a bit about that later in the show. But for those of you who do follow the game and are sort of interested in a little bit more of the detail, one thing that we have in the sort of SuperSport Schools arsenal is SuperSport Schools Plus, we call it, which can be found at www.sschoolsplus.co.za. It's just the most wonderful archive of write-ups from matches. We have 3 journalists largely who do a lot of the hockey write-up for us. Vuyo Ndadani, she really does some wonderful work for us.
Yeah.
Avuyile Savula has been working with us for the last 2-3 years, probably my favorite writer on the game of hockey in the country at the moment. Although not too far behind him, another really one, Christopher, or as he goes, CS Chawanza, also doing some wonderful work and just a wonderful archive of incredible stories, write-ups on players, results, tournaments and that. So really a wonderful resource. And later in the year, we've got some plans with a SuperSport Schools Almanac bridge that hopefully we'll be seeing coming into this space and using just this amazing archive of write-ups. This really is the story of schools hockey as it takes place this year.
No, I mean, it's just the most amazing, journalistic capture of everything going on. It's my go-to all the time.
Yeah, Hannes Nienaber and that team at SuperSport Schools Plus really do a wonderful work. And obviously for those who are not only interested in hockey, hopefully there might be a few of you, not too many of you, we hope, but wonderful stuff. Rugby, netball, swimming, athletics, there's just some wonderful stuff on there. So on that note, it's been an incredible week of derbies. We sort of, this April month's a funny month. Many people they go to tournaments and they come back and they play a derby and then they get on a bus and go to tournaments. It must be quite difficult for some of those coaches, to manage.
Yeah, it's tricky, but you know what, at the end of the day, I know a lot of the coaches, they like to play their hockey. They like to try different combinations, play different opposition. So I'm pretty happy with where it is at the moment.
Yeah, look, they certainly figure out the schools do a wonderful job. First up for me, I have a little bit of a leaning towards Maritzburg College.
We're going straight there.
The thing for me about Maritzburg College this last weekend, they've just sort of come back from being here for the Easter Festival. They go all the way back to Maritzburg, and then a week later they travel back to Pretoria to take on Pretoria Boys High, who've been a tricky customer. They've got draws against Hilton, big draw against Hilton, and a couple of other results go their way. So not an easy team to beat. Maritzburg College beat them at Pretoria Boys, which is a magnificent win for Mark Saunders and their boys. But I think more importantly for me, which I really liked, was just the depth. They lost 1 out of 19 matches on the road to Pretoria, Manny.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a fantastic hockey program. They always had. Of course, Mike Bechet making his way back there. He's now the under 14 coach, and they got a fantastic victory against Pretoria Boys High. But this is the college that we like to see. They've got real hockey heritage, and it looks like they're getting back to those ways. That Pretoria Boys side is it's a tricky side. They have their ups and downs.
Coached.
Yeah, well coached by Jacques Kloppe and well led by Takalani Malautsi, their captain. And it's a difficult side to beat. So really good victory there for Maritzburg College.
And they would be very structured. I mean, they do a lot of work that Pretoria Boys side, they really, really do. And then you've got Maritzburg coming in. So it's a nice game of hockey. It was a really, really interesting game.
And, we've been talking about some of the star players that we saw, on Friday night and various stuff. That star power often is the thing that gets them over the line. And in his third year, their captain, Uyanda Dlamini, is starting to really show that he can play. He brings a lot of leadership, but also ball-carrying ability, defensive ability to that team. He's been impressive. Yeah,
definitely. One of the top 5 players to look out for at the moment in the country, the little number 5, he leads the side well. And he combines well with his under-17 partner, Nsiwa Sitembu, who's absolutely fantastic in that side. So to have a midfield like that just gets things going. They're good on defense. They get the ball going forward. So they really do have a complete side at the moment.
They played together at Nationals last year, and they linked up so well for that inland side. Absolutely. And you can see it now coming through in their game.
And you talk about that heritage, Andile, young Andile Lembete, whose brother plays for the national men's team. Also, really putting in some big performances and relatively young. So this college team certainly going on to better things, and they're making their debut at Hibbit Shield, so it'll be really interesting to see where they go this year. Another interesting win for us down on the Cape, Paarl Roos over Bishops. We haven't seen much of Bishops this year as a team, but this Paarl Roos is a fancy team, 3-2 win.
Yeah, arguably, and I use the word arguably the best side in the country at the moment. I know the guys from SACS will be fighting me on that comment, but a 3-2 loss to them, I think, is a fantastic result. It's not, you haven't just rocked up there and put a side out. You've actually gone to one of the best sides in the country and really competed and put some goals past them and asked some questions of them. So that Bishop side, as we track them through the season, I think they're going to be really
we haven't seen a lot of them, so it's going to be exciting to watch.
And again, a coach now who's focusing on coaching and not also playing his own career. So he's really going to be 100% focused on this role. And I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch at Bishops. Talking about big statement wins. I just thought this weekend, Paarl girls over Bloemhof.
Yes.
It's a big statement, Bridget.
Yes, they weren't on our Friday Night Lights, but they played just before the SACS Paarl game, and they had a cracker, the Paarl girls. They won that game over Bloemhof. Bloemhof played in the finals at St. Mary's. So Paarl, they actually played at the Kingsmead Festival, that Challenge Festival, won that. So they just on strength.
Qualified, they'll be at St. Mary's, and we've been talking about that program all year at Paarl,
Yes.
not only for the boys, but not only for the girls, but the boys as well. So certainly a school
Lovely
that's
result.
building some really interesting hockey pedigree going forward, and it'll be really interesting. And again, sort of in that Boland area, you do like
exactly,
that Boland area, man.
I do.
Boland are going to be something to watch in Pietermaritzburg at the
Always.
Nationals this year, aren't they? Bridget, Swartkorp, Montana.
Yeah.
Another game from the weekend.
Yeah, a lovely game. Just a normal derby, but it's a bit of a big derby between those two schools. So Montana coming off the win with a 1-0 over Swartkorp, and just a nice game of hockey. Both teams putting out a good, tactical play, good hard hockey. What you expect from both those sides. Absolutely. Nothing fancy, moving on the ball, a nice girls' game of hockey. So a good one for Montana.
And talking about what you'd expect, we all went into a JP season with a new coach in CS Satanya. It was interesting to see what they were going to bring on the road down to Westville. They're just continuing their march. You start talking about, you mentioned a bit earlier, those sort of two teams of Paarl, Roos and SACS. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how you're leaving JP out of that mix for the number one team in the country.
Look, it would be, no one can fight that JP is one of the best sides for probably the last 7 to 10 years, So I don't think they need too much recognition. They went down to Westville, they did a job. Tricky place to go down and play. You're on a bus for 7 hours. You get there, the next day you're playing.
And in the rain, it was...
Yeah, exactly.
Tough conditions.
So in Westville's conditions, they went there, they put 5 past them. Not an easy task. And just showing their class once again.
And so look, I think Sia, again... he comes sort of out of that Michael Baker school of hockey down there. He worked very closely with Michael, but to show, he clearly is a quality coach. Yeah,
young coach. He hasn't coached too much first team hockey, so this is a real test for him. But he seems to be stepping up to the task. He had a good nomads. He played some of the best schools in the country. I'd love to see JP go up against a Paarl, Roos or a SACS. Don't know if we're going to see it, but he's really starting to come into his own now. Absolutely, a wonderful trip. Talking about travelling teams, it was a wonderful weekend at the Chris Harker Astro down in Queenstown at Queen's College. It was the 167th Queen's reunion, so there were a whole lot of old Queens running around, or Queenians running around at that. But Selborne 3-2 over Queens. The Selborne program continued to be sort of one of the more dominant ones in the border region. Yeah, good result. Also really difficult, especially in that Eastern Cape region. You do a lot of travelling for your game that's supposed to be down the road. So that's a couple of hours to get to Komani. But to put 3 past Queens, a decent Queens side in a derby, I think a lot of their support.
And you'll know there'll be lots of people around the Astro.
Exactly. Absolutely, and a hat trick there for young Reed Drake. So really another good performance. A really interesting one on the girls front, Pearson, Outeniqua, Bridget.
Yes.
2-0 win for Pearson, probably expected.
Yeah, I think so. That Pearson side's a well-oiled machine. They've got an assistant coach in Tony Marks, and
back to her roots in the Eastern Cape.
And their coach Anton Klettenberg, he's really worked very well with that Pearson side. They've got some nice players. It's good to see that the EP design is coming back. Good hands, so good win for them.
A surprising result this weekend in that sort of Pearson Outeniqua was Outeniqua boys beating those Pearson boys 4-1. Pearson, fresh out of the Kes Easter Festival. Not a team we know too much about, Manny, Outeniqua. Yeah, tough week for Pearson. They went down 4-0 to Grey High, but Grey High a really class outfit. But Outeniqua may be someone we should be talking about a little bit more. They've come out of the woodworks. Not only have they managed to beat Pearson, but they made a statement. So someone we need to maybe look out
such
for.
A small fraternity of hockey.
Yes, a small hockey fraternity, a wonderful sports school. Its facilities are just a wonderful. It is. Outeniqua really has some of the best facilities. George as a town is growing. Mm-hmm. So, I think certainly probably a program that we do need to start watching a bit closer. Grey High, you spoke about them, 4-0 over Pearson. They beat Dale 5-1 as well in the week. Some really solid wins. They're obviously hosting the Standard Bank Hibbit Shield that starts tomorrow. Today.
No, tomorrow. First of May.
Yeah. Coach Andrew Benyon there, obviously, looking good. Coach, Captain Luke Dutoy on the scoreboard regularly. This Grey High team, also one to watch this weekend.
Yeah,
Always.
Class outfit. They also just come back from the Netherlands, so we haven't seen too much of them. We'll chat about it later, but in the Standard Bank Hibbit Shield, they're in the group of death. They got some serious opposition, so that will be a good test for them on home soil to see where they fit into the picture at the moment.
But a good week for them. 9 goals for, one against. Really good a good week of hockey in the sort of local derbies for Grey High. Sticking in the Eastern Cape. Perhaps two unfancied hockey schools. We've certainly seen Graham College put out some really good cricket sides in recent years. They've put out some really solid rugby recently. But Cambridge over Graham 2-0 in that derby.
Yeah, haven't seen too much of these two sides, but Graham College, they're a school with good heritage. They, like you said, they've got good rugby, they've got good cricket. So for a big side like that to go down to Cambridge, also something
Small school.
Yeah, also something happening there, and it's just good to have all that competition. There's no real team you can go to these days and put too many on the board, and that competition's fantastic for the game.
Yeah, Cambridge have really been putting a lot of work into their girls and boys program. So they again are someone you might see just slowly edging their way forward into the A-leagues as they keep climbing up.
And goals there from Linke Hempe and Anganati in Yonga. So it'll be interesting to see how they progress through the season. Probably in closing around this section, there were a couple of other results, but I think really the big one from Durban, DHS 2-1 over Northwood. Probably the two of the more fancy teams. I'm starting to feel a bit sorry for Northwood. The results just at the final, they seem to be going against them this season. They're so close against Marklaas and lose the game. And another one here.
Yeah, game management. But I mean, that DHS side, that's not someone to play with. They're a good side. They touted with some of the best, at the moment.
They're creative as well.
Yeah, exactly. And they like to go forward and they like to score. So the fact that they only managed to score 2 against Northwood, you can see that it's a good outfit. But Northwood, they need to get themselves over the line a little bit better. But that DHS side is good. Don't get them wrong.
Absolutely. And I think one thing, obviously, now with their own Astroturf there as well, not having to travel to train and various things is obviously having an impact in this year. Kersney 1-0 over Glenwood. Keegan Pearce will be quite pleased with that after what was a relatively difficult Kes Easter Festival for them. Kes a big statement win 6-1 over Parktown. We don't want to talk about too much about that. Parktown really need to come back and bounce back as we go into the league. So another wonderful weekend of derby hockey. So much to look forward to as we go into another weekend of festivals, and we'll be talking about those immediately after the break. On Hockey on 216, proudly driven by Hyundai this year, we've been focusing on a few of the sisters. It sort of started, Bridget, with that sort of goal challenge that came between the Schultz sisters from Epworth, who are racing each other for the top goal scoring there. But we received a wonderful photo in the week from Robin Knott of all the sisters that played at the St. Mary's Festival for the various teams. We do love this thing that there's just all these sisters playing in teams together. That's got to really be a very, very special thing to do, to play at this level with some of your sisters and some of these girls a bit about and some of these families. Yeah,
exactly. So the Knott sisters, you've got Cara and Demi playing out of Clarendon. So that's exciting there in this photo. And then
Cara's a bit of a squash player as well.
She's an SA squash player, so very talented. Then at St. Anne's, there are actually 3 sets of sisters, 2 twins. So you've got 2 sets of twins. So you've got the Thomas sisters, which is Emma and Nikki. And Emma's on 4 goals. Nikki's on 5 goals. Nice and tight.
Another one racing there.
Exactly. Then the Kelly twins. Jasmine's on 8 goals. Jada's on 6 goals. So nice and tight.
Another tight one.
Then you've got the Hoffmeyer sisters. Bella's on 10 and Holly's on 9. So again, very exciting.
Is there anyone in that St. Anne's team other than the 6 sisters that are scoring goals?
I know.
To be the total goals there.
And then in DSG, you've got the Holdener sisters. We spoke about them last week. But Abigail just scored her 100th goal overseas.
She's really a talent to watch, isn't she?
She's phenomenal. And her younger sister, who is still very little, Lucy, is on her 17th goal. So she's got a lot of chasing. She's got some chasing to do. She's got time. So it's a challenge to all the teams out there. Submit your sister act and send it to us.
We'd love a few photos of the sisters. Absolutely. I mean, this one is obviously all of them in a wonderful photo at St. Mary's. And just, again, what's so special about that St. Mary's tournament where the families come and everyone gets involved. And, again, it must just be wonderful when you have that. So talking about teams gathering for festivals, we obviously have the Standard Bank Hibbit Shield taking place down in Quebec this weekend, which is one of our favourite tournaments of the year, and we're really very excited for it. down there, our normal co-host, Moodles, not with us because he's down there coaching the under-14s. One of the wonderful things about that tournament is they have an under-14 section as well as under-16s and the Open. But Moodles is down there with some of our camera crew, and he's been talking to some of the coaches down there about what they're seeing in boys hockey strategically, what to expect this season, what they've seen change. And we'll be crossing over to him now. And as he talks to Guy Elliot, the St. Albans coach, but also the national men's under-21 coach, fresh off his win to Namibia, as well as Michael Baker, one of my personal favorite coaches. I just love Bakes. I love the way he plays the game. I love what he brings, the energy that he brings to the game and to his whole life, really.
He'll probably suit up in that one.
Well, if he gets to the final, he'll suit
always.
up. But he's, last year he is the defending champion, so a lot of pressure on Bakes. Obviously, the Paarl coach, and it'll be interesting to hear what they have to say in their discussion with Moodles.
We're coming to you live from the Hibbit Shield in Port Elizabeth on a cold and wet day in PE. And we have Michael Baker with us. We've spoken a lot about Paarl Roos and their program on the show in the previous weeks, and it's good to have Bakes with us, as he's affectionately known in the hockey world, and we're just going to chat some hockey for the next couple of minutes. Bakes, thank you for joining us, and good start for your team at Hibbit Shield.
Yeah, I mean, Hibbit Shield, there's no easy games, so any 3 points we'll take gladly.
Brilliant. I mean, your under-14s, under-16s here as well. We've spoken a lot about your under-14 team, some talented individuals in that team. They've had a very good start to the season. Paarl Roos got their sights set on the 3 trophies, eh?
Yeah, as always, a school like Paarl Roos, I mean, there's no bending. Yeah, we want to win everything, eh? Yeah. So definitely one of our goals for this weekend.
Brilliant. Bakes, we've spoken about hockey in the Western Cape. There seems to be something in the water there. Hockey's growing fast. There are a number of schools that have come online. We talk about Redham, Constantia, Paarl Filet, Paarl Gym are 3 goals up against Grey High School behind us. Looking forward to a good Boland under 18 side. But what have you found the biggest difference to be between Natal and the Western Cape?
I really do think there's a massive talent pool. So I do think there's more people playing hockey. And with that, I want to say schools have started taking hockey a bit more seriously. I think there was a big rugby culture, obviously, in the Bolands. And people are starting to see, hockey is actually quite lekker. Yeah. So we're starting to get more and more boys wanting to play hockey. Yeah. And with the talent pool available, I think now you're starting to see some of the results from it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Paarl Filet did very well at Coastal Cup. Paarl Roos obviously did well down there as well. And I mean, we often talk about, we see the A teams in action at all these festivals and tournaments. I mean, how big is your hockey program at Paarl Roos?
Yeah, so we're sitting on 19 teams.
Sure. Okay.
And honestly, as a school, one of our biggest things looking after all teams.
Yes.
So our 16H have played at a festival. Our 16Cs are now off to Knysna to play in the Oakhill Co-Ed.
Yes.
So we really take pride in looking after all 19 teams.
Yeah, and you talk about that talent pool. I mean, there's 19 teams in one school. I mean, what a fantastic advert for hockey. Bakes, you've been involved in the national setup and been involved at coaching at national level as well. I mean, what do you think we're doing right in South African schools hockey, and what do you think? Well, let's start with what we're getting right.
Yes, I'm going to be honest. I've always said it. I feel often when I arrive for a school game, it's harder than arriving for a provincial game.
Yes.
Because the best coaches are working at the top schools.
Yeah.
Because they're getting paid. So at the moment, the schools are paying the salaries. So all your top coaches are involved at the schools they need to be involved in. Where like right now, you've got under 21 RPT on. And if I look, all your top coaches are here at the Hibbit Shield.
Yes.
So already, like that's one of the biggest differences. And then you've got schools now, I think, starting to invest money in hockey. And start something like the rankings. I think that's making schools take note now. We want to be number one. How do you be number one? You've got to invest something into that.
Yeah. I mean, if you look, Paarl Roos probably ahead of the curve in terms of the hockey. But, I spoke a bit about Paarl Gym behind us. I mean, with Paarl Gym, you associate rugby. but their hockey side, I called it wrong last week. I thought that Grey Bloem would get one over them, but they went down to Bloemfontein and beat Grey. And, they beating Grey High School here in the game behind us. I mean, just fantastic. And as you mentioned earlier, that these schools are investing so much in hockey.
Yeah, so I mean, you look at Paarl now, they've relayed their second Astro, they've just built a new high-performance facility. So everyone now is really starting, especially I want to say in the Boland, which was really rugby focused, everyone is starting to dial in.
Yeah, I remember 10 years ago, Boland was sort of in the top of the B section, sort of just coming into the A section, and now they're consistently in the top 4 at under 18 schoolboy level, and you look at the number of schools from the Boland in that top 10 of the rankings, as you spoke about. I mean, just so much good stuff going on there. So, Bakes, just, thank you for joining us today, and thank you and good luck for what's to come at Hibbit Shield. Good start for your team. Just as we close out, I just wanted to talk a little bit about last year. You had an epic battle with SACS here, ended up winning the Hibbit Shield. What was that like? Because I know in your return fixture back home, SACS had the upper hand.
Yeah.
What was different between the two?
Yes, I must be honest. So we do spend a lot of time doing cultural type activities.
Yes.
And when we were 3-0 down off the first chukker, I was able to bring back a little activity we did, which I want to say was the turning point.
Yes.
Because there was just this massive shift in energy. I think naturally when you play SACS, there's this weird, I want to say, energy about them. People come out a bit scared and hesitant,
yes.
which we did. And then after that little halftime chat, things started to change and we started to go through the gears there.
Yeah, brilliant. No, well, we're looking forward to that battle. Let's hope we see it again this year. But thanks very much for joining me today, Bakes. I appreciate it.
Cool, thank you so much.
I'm privileged this afternoon to get to have a conversation with Guy Elliot, who's just returned with the South African under-21 side after a very successful Africa Cup in Namibia this year, and which resulted in them qualifying for the World Cup, which will take place in India. Guy, welcome.
Thanks very much, Middles. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Guy, this is your second cycle with the under-21s, a dominant performance in Namibia. I think what's important for our viewers, firstly, is that we understand there were a couple of guys who are 22 or in the team this year. Perhaps just for the benefit of our viewers, why was that the case this year?
So originally the tournament was supposed to take place in December, which was last year. It was postponed to April this year. And because of that, they had to keep the existing rules for last year's age category. And one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to underestimate the African competition. So we wanted to take a team there that we knew we could qualify with. And also on top of that, we're losing 4 players from that cycle. And I also felt that they'd put in enough in the last couple of years. They'd really given into that program. So to just sort of let them go before the end of what their cycle would be, I didn't think it would do justice to the team and also to the players themselves, because they've sacrificed so much to be part of that team over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think, Guy, and what you say there is so important. I mean, I think we underestimate the pride that these young men have in playing for their country, and giving them that opportunity to play on the international stage. We probably don't have enough opportunity for our boys to play international hockey, so it's an incredible opportunity for those guys, and hopefully we'll see them moving into the men's setup and adding value there. Guy, I know that it's always difficult to get good prep in before these tournaments. The under-21 team is self-funded, so it's difficult to put that onus on the players for the prep. But you did camp at St Albans before. We've spoken a lot on the show about the resources that schools have and how schools are so willing to give back to the national program. I mean, has that helped your campaign, this campaign and the one before?
Yeah, most certainly, Middles. I think the reality is that a lot of the resources do lie within the schools, and the schools do still feel an onus to help grow the game, and also a lot of them are their past students, so
Yes.
they want to do what's right for them. St Albans has been very kind to me in allowing me to host those camps at a fraction of the price, just to make it manageable. As you know, everything is self-funded. And wherever we've gone around the country, the schools are really welcoming and open to helping us, whether it's with equipment, facilities, a boarding house, some financial assistance through Old Boys. That's really contributed a lot to the success of our under-21 program actually over the last I've been in 4 years. And it's actually played a major role in ensuring we're as prepared as we possibly can be under the conditions that we in.
No, that's incredible. Guy, we spoke a lot about this pipeline that exists at schools at the moment. And I just, seeing the game grow as much as it has at school level over the last couple of years has been incredible. You had a couple of schoolboys in your team now that went over to Namibia. I mean, what would you, in your opinion, say the state of schools hockey is, particularly for the boys at the moment in South Africa?
Middles, to be honest with you, I don't think it's been stronger.
Yes.
It's really on the up, and it's fantastic to see the amount of skill and talent, and not only that, the drive to and want to do well is amazing. Just in my cycle in the last 4 years, every single year the standard of player has improved exceptionally. So what we're producing in South Africa, I've often said we're sitting on a gold mine. If you go around the world, I don't think we're producing as many players anywhere else in the world at this level. What I think we need to do, and we need to work closely together, is jumping on that or piggybacking on that to make sure that there's some continuity from after school moving through into the senior ranks. Once we harness that, I think the Springboks have done that exceptionally well in the rugby space. Once we harness that, I honestly, truly believe, having been at a lot of international events, that we can be in the top five nations in the world. With the amount of talent that we're displaying at the moment. And it's evident to see there's a youngster, Ruben Senzel, who's on my under-21 side. He just finished at Paarl. He's already playing hoofdklasse hockey in Holland. And I'm sure if there were a couple of other guys in my setup that had that opportunity, or someone had noticed them on the international stage, they would also be snapped up by these clubs overseas. So definitely we don't have a shortage of talent coming through the school systems.
No, Guy, I've appreciated the chat today, and I always like to ask the guys what we need to see more of, but I think you covered that. From a school's perspective, we certainly are making strides with the technical and tactical sort of knowledge of our players, and that comes through good coaching, and we're certainly seeing that develop at under 21 and men's level. But Guy, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and keep doing some good work for hockey. We appreciate it.
As we finish what is festival season really at SuperSport Schools, which has really been brought to us by Standard Bank this year across the channel in so many sports. We're into a couple of our last hockey tournaments, hockey festivals, some of them, as we finish out the year. One of the more interesting and new ones, Bridget, that's come onto the calendar this year is the new Girls Hockey Challenge that's being hosted down at Paarl. Tell us a little bit about that.
This is their first year, and it's an exciting one. It's looking at under 19s, under 16s, and under 14s, so slightly different formats.
A little bit on the Hibbit Shield type of thing.
Similar design.
Which is so good, isn't it?
And it's a tournament, so there is a winner in each age group. So, I mean, we're starting tomorrow, the first cracker game, Oranje versus Durban Girls College.
That's 9 o'clock on the SuperSport Schools app.
Correct, and that's going to be really, really exciting. And it goes all the way through. So on the 2nd of May, we're going to do Friday Night Lights from there. We've got hockey from both Hibbit Shield and the Girls Challenge on both.
2nd of April, pretty much all day. Is a hockey day on Channel 216, and obviously also on the SuperSport Schools channel on SABC Plus.
Always. So, you've got great sides down there. You've got Oranje, Durban Girls College, Paarl, which we've spoken a lot about. So we're going to see the likes of that team coming through, home game.
And just on the Paarl side, did I hear that Alanda Radame is only 16 this year?
Grade 10. Grade 10, and you just think of the goals she scored this year alone, and now she's playing on home turf. It's going to be exciting for them. I'm sure they're going to be hunting for a win in that tournament. You've got the likes of Pearson coming off a nice win. There's also St. Cyprian's Collegiate, who've just won the All-Girls Festival. against Greenwich. So that's really exciting for
That's
them.
been taking place literally as we've been sitting here in studio, sort of in the
Exactly.
breaks. We've been watching that final.
Yeah.
They won that on
Shootouts.
on a shootout.
Shootouts against Greenwich.
A very fancied Greenwich team that we
I
like
know.
this season, but they just don't seem to be getting the results in the tournaments.
And then you've got Redham Constantia also there, which is nice. Chris Hibbit coaching that side, which is a nice tie because then we go across to Hibbit Shield, which is kind of in line with him. So very exciting tournament.
One thing about Paarl, we know they put on incredible events. They've, whether it be the under 16 tournament, the boys and girls that they do for hockey in later in August, they put on one of the best sevens tournaments of the year with the Mario Schoolman later in the year. So for the kids touring, for the parents touring, I think it's just going to be a wonderful tournament and just another addition to this really compact, unbelievable selection of tournaments that our kids get to play in this country, Manny.
Yeah, 100%, and really looking forward to it. As we said, the more they play, the more the coaches like it, and the better they get. And looking forward to the end of the season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting.
The interesting thing on this, and the next one that we're going to be talking about is the Standard Bank Hibbit Shield. Also a relatively recent tournament in sort of South African schools hockey. Only started in 2019, so it's in its sort of 6th season.
Yeah.
Defending champions, Paarl Roos, as we spoke about a bit earlier in the show, are back there, Manny. A little bit of history on it. It's named for the whole family, as I understand, Bridget, the Hibbit family. Obviously,
Correct.
Brian Hibbit, who coached the national men's team, Chris Hibbit, who you spoke about, who's coaching down now at Greenwich, and his brother Andrew, and their contribution to Eastern Cape hockey. So, wonderful to celebrate the people that have put so much into
And
this
all
game.
old boys of grey, which is nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's also going to be a lot of that on Friday, all day on
Yes.
Channel 216. And the last 3 matches, which will be playoff matches, will be our Friday Night Lights hockey this Friday night. But Manny, this is a tough tournament to go and win. And you've done a bit of analysis. Tell us a little bit about the pools and who's up against who. Obviously, by the time we show it on Friday Night Lights, it'll be the playoffs. We don't yet know who's going to get through there. You've analysed the pools. You've got a few predictions. It'll be interesting to hear. We're gonna mark you on these predictions next week. So.
Yeah, look, as much as I don't like to make predictions in hockey, but we've got some interesting pools. So we four pools, Pool 8 through to D, each with 4 teams in them. Pool C being the most interesting one for me. They've got Grey High, of course, the host. Paarl, who we've talked about so much
Yes.
in the first segment. Westville, who might find themselves up against it a little bit here. And then, of course, St. Stithians, who have been absolutely brilliant. They've had some good fixtures up against Jeppe as well as Paarl already.
And
Black.
some of the players playing in there, I mean, I think in that St. Stithians College, I think they're highly underrated. I think they're going to be a much better team, and I think this tournament could define them this year in terms of where they are. Certainly one of the most exciting players I've seen this year, Aiden Blatch up front. He's strong, he's dynamic, he can flick, he can shoot, he can hit, he's got it all. He's certainly one to watch. On the Grey High side, though, in Keanu Broadhurst, a really talented goalkeeper under 17. He lost in a shootout last year in the semi-finals. But in a pool like that, where suddenly those playoff games might just, the keeper might be all the difference.
Yeah, and importantly, those 3 sides in Grey, Paarl and Saints, they're sides that like to score. So it's going to be important here for Broadhurst to be at his best. He's probably going to be tested more than he normally gets tested, in a really dominant Grey High side. So, and we spoke about it even at St. Mary's. Goalkeepers are becoming so important for the game at the moment, and we don't talk about them nearly enough, and he might just be a key player throughout this entire festival.
When Sienna Lachungu's on the show, we certainly get to talk about them a bit more. But I think you're 100% right. They're such key players, and certainly so important in the set pieces, and specifically when it gets to shootouts. Obviously, the keeper makes a massive difference, but also in that sort of short corner environment. And a Blatch versus Broadhouse, the one who delivers most on the day, might just see their team qualify for those semi-finals.
Yeah, 100%. And getting to the semi-finals is going to be difficult.
Pool A, who's in that, and what are you calling? So you're not making a call. So you're saying Pool C is the pool of death, any one of 3.
I'm not going to make too many calls, but I'll point out some standout fixtures. So SACS up against Grey College. I think that's going to be a really good game. SACS, I think, might just have it. There's my first prediction. Paarl Roos up against College. We haven't seen too much of Paarl Roos, but we know 3-time champions. They're defending it back-to-back at the moment.
But we know what College always bring on these types of tournaments.
100%.
That's going to be an exciting game.
Yeah, they're going to be tricky to get past. And then in the last Pool D, DHS up against Bishops. For me, that's going to be the most interesting one to see who gets through that pool.
2 teams qualify from each pool, as I understand it. So
Quarters,
who else is in
semis.
that pool, in Pool D with DHS and Bishop?
Yeah, one of the founding teams in this festival, and of course Paarl Filet. You know, we've spoken about them. They're going to have a real test. They're going to have a real test in this group.
Not an easy pool either.
Yeah, not an easy pool. And look, it all depends about who rocks up on the day, isn't it? So, you know, with just the 3 games, if you can just get a little upset, you turn.
But isn't that,
around.
I mean, tournament hockey, that's what's exciting about this coming weekend. It's the first time we're going to see a tournament style for girls and a tournament style for boys. It's been festivals, and now we got the real crux of
Largely,
it.
obviously, the girls around St Mary's we've had, and we've well, in segueing really nicely, Bridget, into the all girls, which has just been taking place at Weinberg this weekend, and it literally has been finishing while we've been in studio. It's been an amazing tournament.
It's been lovely.
That has taken place. As you said earlier in the show, Renish going down in the final to Clarendon in a shootout.
To Collegiate.
Sorry, to Collegiate, not to Clarendon. To Collegiate. A wonderful win for Collegiate. I mean, Manny, you were saying Collegiate 20th at St Mary's Festival?
Yeah, they came 19th, if I'm not mistaken. Their coach, Mike Abrahams, was really disappointed, and I can see why now. They clearly do have a good side. Didn't quite rock up at that festival, but they came to the party now.
Well, you've just been watching them grow over the past little 2 months, and they've obviously, things are just aligning. The stars are coming together for them. And that shootout that just concluded now. I mean, Greenwich we've spoken about right from the very beginning. Now you've got Collegiate with the win. They went up 2-0, and then Greenwich clawed back to get into a 2-2, and then hence the shootout.
And so, I mean, you know, we think that's a highly rated Greenwich team. They'll be a bit disappointed with the St Mary's Festival, with the all girls. I mean, Chris Haber, I think, had set some really big goals this year. He's got 2 wonderful star players, in my opinion, in Pat Bakker and Leah Duplessis. As a squad and as a coach, it must be devastating for them. But another final that they've done well.
Yeah.
And, I think it'll be interesting to see how they progress through the season, and another Boerland school that's really showing a lot of what they've got. But Bridget, in that all goals, we saw some really interesting results that we picked up through the tournament as we've gone through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Oranje having a tough one. We expected a little bit more from them. They ended up finishing 6th. Just losing out to Unisi in that 5th and 6th playoff, also on shootouts. And then Bloemhof, likewise, they came 3rd against Uffie's Macy's. And Uffie's, that's such a nice result for them. They won all girls last year. They had some really good results. They played really good hockey. So, they'll be a little bit upset that they didn't get the podium, but 4th place for them on a young side. Then there were some really nice.
I mean, you're talking about Oranje, a 0-0 draw with Maritzburg Girls High. I mean, I think, the Maritzburg Girls High program in the early 2000s produced some really wonderful hockey players for South Africa. Perhaps haven't been at its best over the last 8 or 10 years, but they'll be very pleased with a result like that. I think they also beat Westville, so that Maritzburg Girls High team
and La Rochelle,
and La Rochelle, So they, a good week for them.
Yeah, they've got a really good goalkeeper, Kumalo, who is in the goals for that Peter Maritzburg Girls side. Holds her team together. She's dynamic. She's flexible. She works well. And then they have some really other nice players. Koza, who vice captain, and then their defence line is solid. I mean, maybe they get put to test often, but that's working in their favour.
They don't give it in, and to Manny's point, those goalkeepers can be so critical, and obviously Kamala's had a big impact because that's a big result 0-0 against
massive.
It's a struggling Oranje team, but they're always really good. Any other results stand out there for you or interesting for you from the all-girls tournament?
They're just some general fantastic results. I think that's interesting to see. Paarl girls, who came off a double loss out of Bloem the weekend before, they had some nice wins in their favour. I think they beat Weinberg girls. Weinberg girls hosting, unfortunately, struggling a little bit, and then they eventually got a win on their last game. So just in general, some really, really good girls hockey. Rustenburg girls, we haven't seen a lot of them. They're coming through well. So they equally finished in middle pool. And that's just nice to see the Rustenburg girls, who traditionally have been a good hockey side. They've always scratched wins here and there, have finished middle pool. So that's great.
Look, it's certainly setting up for an incredible weekend of hockey. And as the host, it's my prerogative. I'm going to put you guys on the spot a bit around some of these tournaments. So the new Girls Hockey Challenge,
yes.
Again, it's so difficult to predict what's going to be taking place there. We've seen, really good results for it's a Mary's Festival, completely different results taking place at all girls. Teams like Oranje and Unisi, who we used to so seeing in semi-finals and finals, suddenly not being in that space. A Rhenish team that hasn't done so well, in some of these tournaments. Are you going to pick a winner for the New Girls Hockey Challenge at Paarl?
I'm going to actually put my head on a chopping block here because St Mary's Kloof are playing and they came off the win at St Mary's Waverley. I don't think
the head or the heart?
No. That's why I say, unfortunately, I don't think that they're going to. The style is going to be interesting. They're playing chuckers, 12-minute chuckers, so it's longer hockey compared to that of St Mary's. So it's going to be more structured hockey, I think. I think Paarl are going to come out with a potential win, playing on home soil.
So you're looking at you're not going to call a winner, but you're giving me Paarl and your beloved St.
Yes,
Mary's
I'm giving you Paarl
and
St Mary's Kloof in the final.
Manny,
yes.
The Standerbank Hibbit Shield, I think it's all to play for. There's so many teams that potentially can win that. A SACS team we perhaps haven't seen enough of.
Yeah.
Paarl's team that's certainly doing very well. A Saints team that I think is a dark horse in anyone's book and perhaps is being underrated. A Grey High School that's at home that's always good. What are you thinking?
So I'm going to go against the grain here, as much as I think everyone will be saying SACS, and they really are a class outfit. Paarl have done it on many occasions. I'm going to discount those two. One of them are going to make the final. I'm going to say whoever tops Group C is going to end up winning the tournament. They would have had the hardest run.
So Grey High, Paarl, Westville or Saints?
Whoever wins Group C goes on to win the tournament.
Goes to win the tournament. I like the way you've thought about that. I think it probably will be the form team going through, and that'll certainly be looking. So look, without doubt, we're in for an extraordinary weekend of hockey and tournament hockey before we get into derbies. It's been another wonderful show. Hockey on 216, proudly driven by Hyundai. Thank you for joining us, Manny, Bridget. It's been wonderful chatting to both of you. We could probably chat for so much longer about what's taken place over the past week, what's coming in the next couple of weeks. We'll be back with you next week and probably moving to a more sort of fixed slot, Bridget, on Hockey on 216 through the festival season and rugby and all those things. It's been difficult, but more than likely on a Wednesday evening, we'll be seeing Hockey on 216 going forward through May and June as we go through the derby weeks. We've really enjoyed your company, and thank you.